He is the first master beekeeper in the state of Maine. Maybe still the only master beekeeper?
No, lots of master beekeepers.
Lots of them now. So how long ago did you get your master beekeeper certification?
1994.
94.
He's just older than all the rest of them.
Exactly. And how long have you been keeping bees?
Since 1980.
1980. All right. So
36 years.
36 years of keeping bees. So we're thrilled to have you here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Frank, how long have you known Rick?
38 years,
38 years.
at least. Long time.
I know several people that keep bees throughout this area. My brother's farm, my sister-in-law Julia Simpson has bees out in Dresden. She now has like 18 hives, I think. She has a lot.
Yeah, she's one of my students.
Yeah, and she's one of Rick's students. Frank kept bees a couple times now.
Tried to keep bees.
And who was your teacher?
It wasn't Rick.
Oh, maybe that's why the
Could've been
bees died.
Yeah, it could have been. Oh, that's why you want to be over
When
here.
you talk to successful beekeepers in this area, they all say the man who taught them was Rick Cooper. So he's very well known for his teaching, very well known for his honey. We have 4 different types of honey he'll get into at the end. We're going to do little samples and a quiz, blind taste test on the honeys. So that'll be fun. We'll get into that a little bit later. At the end of the program, you'll be able to buy as much honey as you want. I don't know what's over there. We're going to put some together, I hope, for the music in April, for a little basket that we're putting together. It'll be fun. So sit back, enjoy yourself. It's all the buzz in town that we're here doing this. Try not to swarm him at the end. And we're looking forward to this sweet presentation.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much.
Time to hook her and get her off.
Yeah, I know. Pull me off.
That was smoker.
Everything in my life is all a buzz, and this is such a sweet deal for me. All right, enough of that stuff.
And you won't get stung.
Well, I won't say that. I want to talk first about the bees themselves. They are incredible creatures. 36 years, I've dealt with as many as 8 million bees a year over that period of time. I visit them 3 or 4 times, 5 times a year. So let's just, for round numbers, say I have 35 million bee visits a year. I want to clear up one thing right fast. If I get a dozen stings a year, that's more than I normally get. So if we're visiting 35 million bees and only getting a dozen stings, gee, I think I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
And every one of those things I can give you is my fault, not theirs. I've reached in and grabbed a bee with my fingers and pinched it and made it afraid. It stings me. Can't hold it against them. Doesn't mean I don't cuss and swear at them. But I can't hold it against them because it's my fault. Having said that, there are 3 bees in the hive. 3 classes of bees within the hive. The queen, our only perfect female. She's the only bee in the hive that has a spermatheca. It is a sac within her abdomen that stores male sperm. She's the only bee in the colony that has one of these. She is the only bee in the colony that can lay a fertile egg. She mates in her lifetime in a period of 3 or 4 days. Once she has finished her mating, and I'll get into this again in a few minutes, she never mates again. She will at that point in time have stored all the sperm she will ever need. This perfect female bee can lay up to 2,500 eggs a day, all summer long, for 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
She's pretty incredible. She's absolutely an amazing animal all by herself. She does no work from the day she's born until the day she dies but lay eggs. That's her one and only job. In Maine, where we live, she'll start laying eggs somewhere late January to early February. She will stop the middle of October in normal years. We haven't had any normal years lately. I have been in my hives as late as Christmas Day and still found eggs in it. That's very dangerous for us up here. You know it's gonna go cold sooner or later, and then things are gonna happen to those eggs that we don't wanna have happen. But that's another story for a different day. But for right now, you have the basic idea of what a queen is and what she does. She is significantly bigger to the trained eye than all the rest of the bees that are in that colony. We can pick her out in a crowd. In a crowd of 80,000 bees, I can find her. Most generally the first time through. Having said that, enough about the queen. Yes,
Does she have a little white mark on her?
no, she does not,
Wow,
unless I put it there.
really?
Now, if I'm going to Freiburg Fair with a glass hive for people to see, she has a mark on her.
Oh. Is
And
that
she will
what
have
it's
one
in
of 5 different colors, depending on what year she was born.
Oh, yeah.
They're red, yellow, green, blue, and white.
Oh, because I went to the Children's Museum.
Yeah, we mark them down there so you guys don't have to go look for them. You
Yeah.
could never
Oh,
find
is
one.
that what it is?
If I didn't mark it, you'd never find it.
Really? Because they
Yep.
fly in and out?
No, they don't fly in and out or anything. They're in there all the time. But
Oh, really?
Unless
I thought
you-
they went outside.
unless you really knew
And
what
they
that
come
queen
back.
looked like, you couldn't find her. Queens cannot fly.
Oh,
Only worker bees can, wild workers and drones can fly.
Right.
Queens do not fly.
oh,
Their
okay.
abdomen's too big and too heavy for them to support with the wings that they have.
Oh,
So they don't fly. I'll say that and then I'll qualify that later too.
all right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, we have drones, the male bees in the colony. I know you ladies in this room are gonna appreciate this. Drones are absolutely useless except for one thing, mating. The rest of the time, the drones are hanging around the hive, begging for food and waiting for sex.
Ah,
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that's what was coming. Yeah, that sounds like my house. It is what it is. The males go out every morning around 10:30. They go to an area called the drone congregation area. It's a street corner. They all roll up their sleeves, they put a pack of smokes in there, they lean against the lamppost, and they wait for a virgin queen to come by. If she doesn't come by, they come back home at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they go back in and start begging for food again. It's a routine, it's a ritual. What makes this drone congregation area out there in the environment, we don't know. But they're there. They're usually downwind, generally downwind of a hive so that they can smell the queen coming. They know she's there. The queen mates in the air about 100 feet off of the ground. She will mate with as many as 12 or 15 drones on every flight she takes, and she'll take 3 or 4. That's the end of that. Drones cannot carry pollen. They cannot make honey. They do provide some benefits for the colony in, i.e. male morale. There's boys here. This is cold. And they also generate tremendous amount of heat. So on the cool nights when all the drones are inside the colony, they're generating tremendous amount of heat, which helps hold the temperature up in the hive. This becomes important in a couple of minutes. Yes?
Didn't you say a few minutes ago that the queens can't fly?
Ah,
Once they have.
I'll requalify that. A virgin queen can fly, a mated queen cannot. Okay, the other side of this thing, the last of these all but 201 bees that live in this colony, give 200 drones, 1 queen. The other 78,800 or so bees in there are female worker bees. Their job is to gather the 4 substances that hold this hive together. They gather nectar from the flower, which they turn into honey. It is their carbohydrates and it is their sugars. They gather pollen from the plants. This is their proteins, amino acids, and a lot of other good rounding necessary vitamins and minerals that the bees have to consume. They gather water, which they may use to dilute honey so that they can consume it, or they may use it to cool the inside of the hive. And they gather a substance called propolis. There isn't a beekeeper in the world that wishes that this didn't exist. It is a bee glue. It is the substance of repair. It's a resin off of tree buds and limbs and branches. It is very, very sticky, and it's very yucky to work with. But the bees use it to fix everything we make a mistake with. If I reach inside their box and I just scratch the wall in there with a hive tool and make an indentation in the wood, the bees will come and polish that all up and fill it full of propolis. I have never seen furniture makers that can make a hive as smooth as the bees do inside. They do a great job with it. And they use propolis to seal up all the pores of the wood. They use propolis to seal every crack and crevice that would let air in or cold air in. And they cement all the frames down that I want to pull out. I want to pull them out and look at the bees and see if they're doing okay and make sure everything's going well. And it's like, to break those frames apart just so you can pull them out. They do cement everything down with this stuff. Some species or races of bees have a tendency to do it more than others, but they all do it to some extent. And it gets on your fingers, and your hive tool's there, and you're shaking it, trying to get your hive tool off your fingers because it's stuck. It's great stuff, and every beekeeper in the world hates it. But it is another substance from the hive. It's another good product.
If you see a bee on a flower outside or whatever, is it a worker bee or a drone?
It's a worker bee.
It's a worker bee.
Yeah, drones won't be on flowers.
They won't,
No,
okay.
no, they'll be out there hanging around the street corner.
So it's always a worker.
Yeah, it's always a worker bee.
It's
Yeah.
on the flower,
Always.
yeah.
Now, bumblebees you have to be careful with because bumblebee queens will actually go work.
Oh, really?
But honeybee queens don't. They stay in the hive. So there's two different species of bees.
Oh.
Bumblebees are native to America. Honeybees are not. Honeybees came over with pilgrims. They came over from Europe. They're actually a European honeybee. So that's that. I want to talk about the life cycle of the honeybees a little bit here. Again, drones are a seasonal thing. They're born in April. You girls will like this even better. Because there is no mating in the winter, we don't need males in the hive. So come September, the girls throw them out on the ground, starve them to death. We'll get some new guys in the spring. We don't need these guys all winter, why feed them? They don't do anything. There's no mating gonna be happening. Don't feed them, throw them out on the ground. Just starve them right to death. You ought to see these guys fighting to get back in the hive.
They dismember them too.
Well, they'll do that too if they have to. But the girls haul them out, 2 or 3 girls will haul out grown out by the legs and throw them on the ground. And then they won't let him back in. Because he can't forage and he can't feed himself, he starves to death. Wow. I'm glad I'm not a drone. Other than that, okay, we've got the queen, again, she goes through her cycle of becoming a queen. She goes on her mating flights, now she settles down, she never leaves the hive again until some occurrence happens that she has to leave. One, there's just way too many bees in there, and the old queen is put on a diet. She's shrunk down, they stop her from laying eggs, so her ovarioles begin to shrink. Now she becomes flyable. She can again fly. And half the worker bee force takes off with this old queen and they go make up a new colony. Natural propagation of the species. It's called swarming. It usually happens in Maine from May 5th to July 1st. And after that, it's usually over with. It is the whole process of just making new nests in new trees or new buildings or new garages or wherever they decide they're gonna nest. It's part of the spreading of the species and protecting everybody. Let's see, that's the only time the queen really gets involved in anything other than that. Yep,
Does she need to mate again at that point?
no.
She still
Once
has,
she's mated, she's done,
that's it for life?
forever. Yep, she just stops laying eggs for a while, and then as soon as she starts laying eggs, she'll swell up again, and then she won't be able to fly again, once she gets to the new house. Worker bee. She is the most important of all because she's the only one that's providing us with food. And by the way, the honeybee is the only animal in the world that makes more food than it eats. The only one. Every other animal on the face of the earth takes more from the earth than it gives back. The honeybee actually makes more food than it can eat. That's why we're allowed to steal honey and put it in jars. Worker bee. She's all bees, workers, drones, queens. They spend 3 days in their cells. They're laid as an egg. For 3 days, they just sit there as an egg. Nothing happens other than it's kept warm and it just sits there. It hatches out on the 3rd day, and for the next 8 days, it's going to be a larva, i.e. a caterpillar. It's going to go through its whole process of growing, but it grows within that cell. It's fed a very high concentrated protein food for 3 days. Then it's put on a less concentrated food until day 8 when it's capped in the cell. They put a wax capping over the top. Now that larva in there is full grown. It's as big as it's going to get. And it stretches out and it says, let's make a cocoon here. And it begins the process of metamorphosizing from a larva, a worm, into a full-grown adult honeybee. At day 21, from the day that egg was laid, that bee emerges from that cell as a full-grown adult working honeybee. She's ready to go to work. She'll emerge, she'll stretch her wings, she'll dry her wings off a little bit. She will immediately proceed to a cell to gather up a little bit of honey to get some strength, and she starts working. Her first job for the next 2 or 3 days is to clean cells. She sticks her head in, she uses her proboscis, her tongue, to clean and lick the sides of those cells and prepare it for the queen to lay another egg in. Once she's finished one, she moves on to the next one. Not next door. She'll wander around till she finds one that needs cleaning, and she'll clean that one. Never seems to be OCD kind of a thing, you know? It's more of a random, scattered process here. But they get everything done they need to do. Those 3 days she cleans cells and gets ready for the eggs to be laid. The next 3 or 4 days after that, she begins feeding a substance called bee bread to adult larvae, older larvae. It's a mixture of honey and pollen. She mixes it up. She will take it to the larva and she will begin feeding older larvae, stuff that is 4, 5, 6, 7 days old. She feeds this substance to them very abundantly. Anytime they need food, they're getting food. The bees take very, very good care. It takes 3 workers just to care for one larva and making sure they get food constantly so they grow. They grow the way they're supposed to. Big and fat and juicy and ready for the fish hook. Whatever. No, we don't use that. The next 4 or 5 days after that, there are some glands in the forehead of that young worker bee that begin to develop. And they secrete a substance called royal jelly. This is fed to very young larvae, less than 3 days old, until they are 3 days old. It is fed to queens from the time they hatch from their egg until they're sealed in their cell. The royal jelly. Very high protein, very highly concentrated, very nourishing substance. But bees that aren't 8 or 9 days old can't secrete this from the glands on their forehead. So they've been doing other things until those glands become active. Now they begin feeding young larvae. This only lasts 2 or 3 days, and their functions now begin to develop in other ways. They begin going around in the hive. Some of them will be fixing broken places. Some of them will be taking the propolis, moving it around and patching up the places where I just stuck my hive tool in and they're mad at me. Others will be secreting wax from glands on their stomachs. And then about 13 or 14, 12, 13, 14, somewhere there, the sclerites, the wax glands on their stomachs, begin secreting wax. Every time they touch a drop of honey, it secretes a flake of wax, very tiny. They will gather those up in their mandibles. They will become cell builders, cell repairers. they'll become honey cappers, they'll become brood cappers, young larva cappers. They will secrete that wax out and they'll go around, seal up all these cells. Yes.
So nobody teaches them, none
Nope.
of the older ones?
Nope,
It's
not that
built
we
in.
know of. We can't really live in the hive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to see if somebody really teaches them that or not. This is all, we pretty much feel that this is in their system. Now, I'm giving you all the jobs a bee can do. Some bees will skip some of these jobs because they're not needed. And some bees will retrograde back into some of these tasks because something's happened. For instance, wax cell builders, the wax secretion process can be retro from a guard bee at day 18 back to day 12 because I just ran my hive tools through the middle of the thing and I made this awful mess, and now they need a whole bunch of wax builders to fix this in a hurry. The wax will begin secreting again. They'll go repair all the stuff that happened. A bear claws down through it. They'll go fix it. It happens very quickly. In that sense, we have our wax builders, we have our house cleaners, we have undertakers that show up. A bee's been working in the field, her lifespan is over, she comes in the hive, and sometime during the night she perishes. We have undertaker bees that go around the hive, pull that bee out, take her down the front entrance, and take her out in the field and drop her off. A burial on the surface. They just get rid of them. They don't want them in the hive. Dead stuff in the hive is disease and problems, they take it out and throw it on the field. We have guard bees, my favorite bees. They hang around the front entrance waiting for an intruder. Preferably, I prefer that they attack wasps and hornets and other things trying to get into the hive, or mice, shrews, things like that. I prefer they not attack me. It's not fun. But the bees will eventually migrate to the front entrance where they begin guarding the front entrance of the hive. Now, this is this wide and it's this thick. I only need 6 bees to guard the whole front entrance. I don't need 600. So some of these guard bees never become guard bees. They just begin doing other things in the hive and they eventually will migrate to the front entrance. All bees will. About day 21 of their lives, they will come to the front entrance and they will begin flying. Today, they fly that far from the front of the hive, and they hover. And they do this between 1 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they look around and they say, oh yeah, cool, we're out here in the open. I like this, yeah, my wings are working, everything seems to be okay. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, they come out and they're this far from the front of the hive. And they're looking around and saying, well, yeah, nothing's changed, it's really the same, it's just a little farther away. Oh, cool, I like this. On the 3rd day, they come out and they're this far from the front of the hive and they're all hovering around, checking out everything. Yeah, well, okay, I got it now. My GPS has just kicked in. I know where this place is. I have all these ultraviolet light problems or programs that are out there that tell me where home is. I also know that that bush is over there because I spotted it. And I know that limb's hanging over the hive because I see it. I know where home is. Day 4, they become foragers. They're out there gathering up one of those 4 substances: water, nectar, pollen, propolis. 3 weeks later, they have literally worked themselves to death. They literally have worked themselves to death. They head out to a flower, they gather up some nectar, the wings aren't strong enough to carry them back to the hive. And they fall down in the forest floor and they become spider food. Or in the case of my area up there in Bowdenham, wild turkey food. Seems like they come around and clean up all the dead bugs. It is part of nature, it's part of what goes on. 42 days from the day that egg was laid, that bee is now dead. She's completed her life. In that span of time, for our consumption, she has made 1/12 of 1 teaspoon of honey. 1/12 of 1 teaspoon. I believe if I did the calculation correctly, it took 680 bees their whole lives to make that 1 jar of honey.
Don't you feel guilty?
No.
Yeah, but
Again, I do not feel bad about this. This is nature. This is nature at its very, very best. I work with my bees, I take care of my bees, I do the best I can for my bees. But it doesn't matter. If I don't, they're still only gonna live 42 days. I did nothing to shorten their life. I did nothing to prolong their life. I've done the best I can for them. Let's see, out of that.
How far away from their hive do they go?
Oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. 3 miles that way, 3 miles that way, 3 miles that way, 3 miles that way.
Really?
10,000 acres they cover.
And they
Now,
go-
they don't like to. They'd rather walk out on the flower and come back inside full. But they will go up to 3 miles in every direction.
And they can find their way back to the hive?
And they find their way to within 8 inches of where they left. 8 inches. The front of a hive is 16 inches wide. If I pick that hive up in the middle of the day and I move it 3 feet, when I go out there at 7 o'clock, I've got thousands of bees on the ground where the hive used to be. They can't find it
Oh, no.
because I moved it. But if I move it back, they'll all go inside. They won't die there on the ground. They will find another hive to crawl into.
Oh.
It's like a good neighbor showing up for dinner. They smell you barbecuing that steak on the back deck and they just show up with a bottle of wine. Come on in. We'll pour us a glass, we'll have some dinner. If bees show up with a full stomach of nectar, come on in. You're welcome here. You show up empty? Yeah, no. You go back home, cook your own dinner. I'm not getting in the hive if you don't bring me something. But workers can go anywhere. They have their specific hive, but they'll be accepted anywhere, provided they bring something with them when they come. So we can pick a hive up and move it, and put an empty in its place, or put a weak colony in its place. I have a big strong colony and a weak colony, and swap the positions. All those field bees will go in the weak colony, make it stronger.
Wow.
It's cold. I can do all kinds of things.
Do the guard bees have any specialized?
They're bribable. They're very bribable. If you show up with honey or nectar, they'll let you in.
But I'm thinking of when wasps come or something.
Oh, no, they put out a pheromone, an odor. Almost everything in the hive is controlled with odors. They put out an alarm pheromone, and I'm telling you what, lots of bees show up at the front entrance to defend it. That wasp has no chance whatsoever.
So they'll sting it?
No, actually, they don't. Strangely enough,
Well, it kills them.
they overheat it and kill it by cooking it. You get 15 or 20 bees all jump on this wasp, because their bodies are generating so much heat. What happens is they actually cook the wasp in the cluster, and then it dies. Yeah, it's cold.
Yeah.
They don't actually sting it.
Well, because they would
Yeah.
die if they did.
Well, no, usually we have a fairly tough skin, believe it or not, even though some of us have a tendency to cut themselves with knives constantly. We usually have a pretty tough skin, and the bee stinger can't pull out of our skin, so it stays there. But with a wasp or hornet, it's such a soft tissue that they probably would pull their stinger back out. But they don't sting the wasp, they overheat it.
The bees do die when they stink.
Yeah, when they sting a person, they die.
Yeah.
Honeybee stings a person, it dies, or a dog, because we have a tough enough skin that they actually pull their whole abdomen out.
Stinger can't
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I want to talk about bee food for a little bit, i.e. flowers. Gosh, we love flowers. We all want to help our honeybees out. We all want to plant something for the honeybees. Don't. Just don't do it. It's a waste of money, waste of time, waste of effort. Again, how many of you own 10,000 acres? How many of you want to till all 10,000 acres and put it into bee food? Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't either. Does that mean that I won't throw some white clover seed on my front lawn? No. I've been known to do that. I don't have a lawn. I think these people that have this vast wasteland to the bees in front of their house that's mowed precisely 7/16 of an inch high every Tuesday are just, no.
Useless.
No, I don't think so. Right now, we have a flower in bloom. I know you guys don't believe me, but we do. It's called alders. I'm not talking about the crocuses and stuff. I'm talking about real bee food. You can plant 10,000 crocus around the foundation of your house and you're not gonna get 12 bees on it. It's just not gonna work. But right now, the alder is in full bloom. Alders have little catkins, they hang down. If you're going up through Topsom towards Bodenham on 201, you look on the left side of the road and it's full of them. Absolutely full right now,
Where's that at?
right by your house, just below your house,
Okay, because I was out in the woods
down there,
collecting maple sap,
Karen's Corner.
and the bees were bugging me.
Yeah, down around Karen's Corner,
Okay,
right in that area.
so they're within flying distance.
Oh, yeah, your bees are in there. It's one of the first blooming flowers they have, that and skunk cabbage, which, if you have a swamp, you have skunk cabbage somewhere out there in the woods. The next flower to come in is is the one we all go snip a few of and stick in the vase on the kitchen table. The pussy willows. You know, we're all gonna go snip one or two and put them in the house and watch them bloom. They provide a tremendous, not a tremendous, but they provide an adequate amount of pollen for the bees early in the season and a little bit of nectar to keep them going. Following that, come April, give or take 8th to the 15th, and these dates are absolutely arbitrary depending on what Mother Nature decides to do, the maple trees are gonna come into full bloom. People don't think about honeybees and trees, but every single tree we have out there blooms. Acorns don't come magical, they come from a blossom. Those little whirly-giggy things from elm trees don't come magically. Those are seeds that have been pollinated, they're somehow pollinated and fall out of the tree. The beech nuts, actually the birches bloom. The maples are the first to bloom though, and actually they come at a very important time because that's the time when the stores of our wintered over bees are at minimum. They have no honey left. They've been raising brood since February. They've been eating tremendous amounts of honey, and here comes the maple bloom, and it rescues an awful lot of our bees for us. It really does. Once the maples go by, we're coming into one of my favorite times of the year. Very favorite of all. The apple trees begin to bloom. Now, apple trees to me are absolutely worthless. You know, they make a nice fruit. I mean, they're good to crunch on in the fall. I mean, I pick my bushel every year and eat them. It's fair. But also on the floor of the apple orchard is the most magnificent, the most beautiful, the most gorgeous flower of all, the mighty dandelion.
Yeah.
Dandelion flower contains 27% protein in its pollen for honeybees. It's like filet mignon for honeybees. Tremendous amount of source of protein for our bees at a time when they're growing leaps and bounds. This is the greatest flower ever invented. Spread it everywhere. Wait till it gets in white puff blossom, then mow it and spread those seeds out everywhere. Bring them on. Love dandelions. Also, it is a huge crop of nectar at this point in time. Bees can actually make a surplus of honey on dandelions. Your hives can go from 15 or 18 pounds to 40 pounds during the week or so that dandelions are in full bloom. This is a very, very important source of food early in the spring for the honeybees. Tremendously important. I love them. And I will tell you a secret about dandelions. When they first come up, they're this tall. If you mow them, they'll be this tall. If you mow them again, they'll be this tall. And you're eventually going to mow them till they won't be able to be mowed. They'll bloom right down inside the green part of the dandelion. They are going to go to seed. You can't stop them. Once dandelions have gone by, we start to come into the last of the trees. That's about the time that the birches and beeches and the locusts start to bloom. It's also the time of Maine's second largest agricultural crop. It's the time of blueberries. We import some 60,000 commercial hives into the state of Maine every year just to pollinate blueberry blossoms.
Really?
Wyman, Jasper Wyman and his crew up there in Washington County need lots and lots and lots of honeybees to get those blueberries growing the way that they're supposed to be. So we bring them in on trucks. We don't. But he brings them in truckload after truckload after truckload of bees coming into the state to go pollinate his blueberries. And it's not just Jasper, there's other people up there too. So we've got the blueberry blooms. Once you come out of blueberries, to me, at that point in time, I don't have any over here. This, by the way, is traditional blueberry honey color. It's more dark or bust color.
The pumpkin?
What are the bees eating?
No.
You have to
What
leave,
are the bees eating? The same thing?
The nectar out of the flower of the
Yeah.
blueberry plant. The
Is that why the different shades?
Yep,
or the different
pretty much.
yeah?
No, not really, because the color of honey we think is directly proportional to the mineral contents in the nectar.
Ah,
The more minerals in the nectar, the darker the honey gets,
hmm,
we think.
hmm.
But we're really not sure, because some years honey varies in the actual same flowers. From year to year, the same field can have different colored honeys. I've had very dark blueberry honey, and
Why
I've
is it
had,
called blueberry? They eat blueberries?
yep, I've had blueberry honey that's lighter than that.
Ah,
Traditionally, you know, that's a blueberry honey.
wow.
It's much darker. But
how do you know from the hive what they have eaten?
when I put bees in the blueberry field, I put it on an empty box. If they fill it with nectar and cap it off as honey, it's gotta be blueberry honey, because there's nothing else in bloom.
Oh, okay.
And they stay within the 3-mile radius of home.
Yeah,
Really?
so if you throw them out in that big, vast, empty area of blueberries, they're gonna bring back blueberry nectar, and make honey out of it, pretty much. The other side of that is that next, as the blueberries begin to die off, there's one more sets of very, very important flowers that come in. And that's your raspberries and blackberries. Tremendous amount of nectar, tremendous amount of pollen from both of those plants. We call them cane fruits for lack of better things. They're all outstanding flavors for honey. They're very mild, very sweet, very pleasing. The clear cuts up north, we hate to think about 500 acres being cut down and nothing left. But what'll happen right after that happens is that raspberries will come into bloom. And for the next 3 years, until those trees get this tall, there's gonna be nothing out there on that 250 acres but raspberry blossoms. In 3 weeks' time, one hive of bees sitting in a raspberry patch like that can make an excess of 150 pounds of honey.
Impressive.
Yes, terribly impressive, yes.
What happens when they fill the hive?
Well, then we give them more space. We try to be there to manage that for them. If we can't, they're gonna swarm out in the trees somewhere. We're gonna talk about that too in just a second. We're gonna finish up with that. Yep.
I have a quick question. So when you move the hives around and they go into a new field they've never been into, how do they find their way to your hive?
We lose about 10% of our field force now. Field force, i.e. the last 5,000 bees that are coming out the front entrance, we'll lose 10% of that. The rest of them will figure out where the hell home is. They'll go out and reorient. They'll do that orientation flight again. They'll say, oh, wait a minute, I know where I am. And they'll come back to their hive. Those that just run out the front entrance and take off,
Don't,
they'll find somebody's hive to go into,
oh,
but it may not be mine.
yeah.
So some of those bees do drift away from place to place as you move hives around.
Do you have to leave some honey in the hive?
For winter?
To
Yeah, we leave them 100
sustain-
pounds, we leave them 100 pounds.
You do?
Yep, that's what has to get them through the spring.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, going on with our flowers, once we hit summer, the raspberries, the blackberries have gone by, we start all our summer flowers. The clovers, the vetches, the things like that, they come again and again and again, as long as somebody will keep mowing the yard, they'll keep coming back. Fields, we love to see the farmers be able to get out in their fields early in June and mow. Once they knock all that tall grass down, the first thing comes into bloom is clover. As soon as they get it up knee-high and they mow it again, more clover comes back. Love to have a good year for haymaking, because it makes good years for bee foraging. You also have one of the flowers that I think is an exceptionally good flower for floral honey. And that's milkweed. It's a weed, it's obnoxious, nobody likes it,
It smells so.
but I'm telling you, you get honey that's made from milkweed blossoms, and all you wanna do is go inside where you have the tank set up, and you wanna fan the lid when you go in. Because it's like being in the florist shop. It's like all the blooms on Valentine's Day are all out. It's so spectacularly smelling. Don't like milkweed honey for taste. I consider it to be absolutely tasteless. It's bland, it's neutral. It's neither sweet, nor sour, nor robust, nor light. It just has no taste to me. I sat there one year and I could smell it, and I could taste it, I couldn't taste it. It was just, I didn't get any sweetness when I put the honey on my tongue and went to taste it, there was nothing there. It was like I didn't have anything to eat. As the summer progresses, of course, you've got your gardens, your vegetable gardens particularly, squash, cucumbers. For lack of, I don't know why anybody would ever grow one, but zucchini and summer squash are both good bee fodder. Peas and beans they don't need bees. Strawberries do not need bees. They're wind pollinated. So, you know, we get into these things. Late fall honeys, of course, we get into the more robust honeys in the later fall. We get into the goldenrods and some of the later crops of flowers. One of the very latest of all the flowers that you can have in your yard, if you want to see bees late in the honey season, is sedum. Looks like a cabbage head. There'll be 25 or 30 bees on one of those sedums, all trying to get into those millions of flowers that make up a head of sedum. They love that, and it's one of the last flowers in the year to bloom, so it's a great thing for the bees to have. Sweet clover is another good one, but there's not enough of it in Maine to really call a sweet clover crop. It's a midsummer crop. Other than that, we've covered pretty much all of the flowers that you need to go. You want to plant something in your yard for bees, by all means plant whatever you want. It's not going to make a bit of difference to the honeybees. They're probably not going to make a tablespoon of honey off of anything you grow on your house lot. But if you want to attract honeybees to your house lot, then plant flowers for the honeybees. Bee balm, some of the others, certainly, I don't know what really is good for bees in the yard because I don't really grow anything for bees. I mean, I'd go out with a handful of clover seed and I try to sprinkle on everybody's lawn when they're not looking.
What's the difference between a honeybee and a bumblebee?
Honeybees are a species, I don't want to get into it too scientific.
Right.
Bumblebees are great big bees that are true hibernators. In September, the queen will lay a bunch of eggs that are female eggs. Queens will hatch out and they will go mate in September. They will go out on the fourth floor and they'll burrow under an old rotten log. And they will absolutely hibernate for the winter. All the rest of the bumblebees in that nest die. The old queen dies, all the worker bees in there die, there's no more bumblebees in that nest. It just dies out over the fall. By October, they're all dead and gone.
And I learned last year bumblebees stink.
More
Disturb the
than,
bumblebee
more
nesting
than
ground.
once.
Yeah, they can sting all up, over and over and over. But that bumblebee is truly a hibernator. The honeybee is not. Bumblebees are more solitary. A big nest of bumblebees would be 40 bees.
Yeah, they don't make honey, right? The bumblebee?
They do and they don't. Cutest thing you ever want to see is a bumblebee nest. It looks like a Quonset hut, woven grass in the field.
Oh.
They actually weave the grass over and make a watertight Quonset hut looking thing. Inside, how many of you have ever seen the cup and saucer ride from Disney? On the shows or anything else?
I know.
That's what it looks like. There's a nest in the middle of, if you can get an old rock wool, God, they love old rock wool insulation and stuff like that, cardboard, they can chew up and they make this little nest in the middle. And there's like a dozen eggs in there and larvae being hatched, being raised. Around that is like 10 of these little cups and saucers with this very dilute solution of honey on.
Huh.
And the bees, the queen inside runs over and she gets a little dab of that, and she feeds the larva until it goes through pupation. Cutest thing you ever wanna see. Yes, they make honey. No, it's not harvestable. There's nothing in there we could harvest. It's much too dilute. It would just ferment. If we went out and did anything, it would just ferment before we could get to it. So that's the story on that. Bumblebees are a different species. They're Bombus americanus. Honeybees are Apis mellifera. Two different species of bees. We have other pollinators in Maine besides honeybees and bumblebees. We have orchard mason bees, we have alfalfa leafcutter bees, we have lots of things that pollinate plants and fruits and vegetables out there. There's some of these hideous looking blue-green beetle bee kind of things that are out there running around that do it too. Halictid bees, we call them. There's all kinds of pollinators out there. They're all different. Let me see, where are we going from there? No, I have to stop and think if we want to go any further down that road. But there's a lot of stuff going on out there in the environment that takes care of our fruits and vegetables for us. Flowers, bees, life. Geez, I've covered an awful lot of it. Now let's talk about the harvestable products that I get for all my efforts to keep my bees happy and comfortable. I build them a house. I give them starters in there so they can build the rest of their house on my plans instead of theirs, which their plans don't always adhere to mine. But I give them a place to be. I give them sugar syrup when they need it to get them going. I give them pollen patties in the fall if they need that to build up on. I do the best I can to take care of my bees. They give me 5 kinds of honey, if I choose to make all 5 kinds of honey. They give me extracted liquid honey. They will give me comb honey in 2 forms. Either a full frame that I just cut pieces of comb out of and put in a box, or they will give me section comb honey, which I give them the pre-made box and they make the honey inside it. Hate those. Bees hate them too. But they will do this if I ask them to do that. There's also a chunk honey, which basically is, that looks like a really pretty piece of comb honey, but it's got all these empty holes in it. I'll just cut that out, put it in a jar, and I'll put some liquid around it and call it chunk honey. Okay, another product. And the last one, of course, is creamed honey. It's a process we go through to make it. It's a spreadable peanut butter consistency honey.
What's in that?
Honey.
And
Like honey.
Honey.
Yeah.
It's just honey.
But it says honey, no?
Just honey.
Yeah.
It's all it is. It's just honey. What we do though is we find a honey that crystallizes. All honey crystallizes.
Yeah.
We find a honey that crystallizes like peanut butter. And we'll take a pound of that and we'll stir it into 10 pounds of honey. And we'll put it about 57 degrees for 3 or 4 days, and it'll all be thick peanut butter like honey at that point in time. Now you take that 10 pounds and you stir it into a 60-pound pail. You let that set 3 or 4 days, now you got 60 pounds of creamed honey. All it is a very thick, pasty-like honey. Very easy for the knife to get from the bucket to the toast. When you put it in tea, it'll go back to liquid. You put it on toast, it may go back to liquid. But it just makes it easier to carry around on a knife than liquid honey.
Is it a tan color?
Well, it's the color of whatever honey is.
Well, I got, my last honey was, and I'm trying to think, he called it natural or something.
Oh, yeah, I know that guy.
Unpasteurized.
Yeah, I know that guy.
Came out of a guy a little further north.
Yeah, he calls it raw and natural. That's raw and natural. I need to get into this one. I probably ought not to.
Very good.
Talk about microwaving honey.
Yeah, never rewarm your honey in the microwave. Never, ever, ever. There's a point in that microwave that's this big, and that's where all those microwave beams are focused. And you will burn that honey in that spot while you're trying to warm all the honey around it. You want to warm up your jar of honey because it crystallized on you. You set that in a pan. You put water up to the height of the honey. Take this out. boil that water. Set this in very gently back in that, after you got it off the burner. You may have to do it twice, but that'll go right back to liquid. Now, every honey crystallizes over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once it's crystallized, no matter how many times you reliquefy it, it's gonna shorten the time to crystallization again. So if you had it 6 months the first time, you reliquefy it all, and you should not have honey 6 months. Not in this size jar. Rules are, in 6 months, you eat a whole pound.
Yeah.
And if you're buying in 5 pounds jars, yeah, okay, a year's fine, but the next time you're only gonna get 3 months out of it, the next time you probably only get 3 weeks out of it before it goes back to crystals again. The reason for that is you're not heating it as thoroughly. You're just heating it till the crystals go away, and the crystals are still there. You just can't see them. And they reform very quickly. Yeah,
2 things. If mine crystallizes, I just put it in, you know, a boiling cup of tea anyway,
that's fine.
yeah?
That doesn't hurt anything.
And when you heat it, the cover, of course, is on or jarred, or, I mean, you don't want it to
No, do not want it absorbing moisture.
What?
Do not want it absorbing any steam or moisture out of the air.
Thank you.
Honey is honey at 18.6% moisture. When it gets above that, it starts fermenting. Now, there's a number of people around that probably wouldn't really care if the honey fermented.
Oh, yeah.
What happens to fermenting products usually?
Alcohol.
Alcohol, yep, let it ferment, I'll suck down the alcohol that's in it. It's not good for honey to ferment, so we try to keep moisture away from it. Keep the lids on your tight. Proper storage place for that honey. In my grandmother's house, it was on the back of the oil stove, on the little shelf that sat back there. That's where my grandmother always stored my grandfather's honey. It's always about 80 degrees up there. Always stayed liquid. He always got his honey out fixed whenever he wanted it. Today, you know, back of your electric stove, back of your gas stove, if there's a shelf back there to stick it on, yeah, not a bad place. Otherwise, the cupboard right above the stove.
If you're burning wood in a box alongside it.
Yep, that's fine too. The last place you want to store your honey is in the refrigerator. You want solid frozen honey, you want crystallized honey, refrigerator will do it overnight. It'll absolutely crystallize your honey. So, and again, crystallized honey doesn't make any difference. I mean, you can take it out with a spoon, put it on the toast, spread it around, and you're still, you know, if the toast is hot, it's gonna reliquefy that honey in short order. So it's still good. Honey, for our lifetimes, never ever spoils, folks. Doesn't go bad. Unless you leave the lid off in the hot, humid summertime, let all that moisture get in there, then it'll ferment. But as long as you keep the lids on, keep it tightened down, honey's still edible 100 years later. I wouldn't eat that 2,000-year-old honey they found in the tombs, but, you know, I wouldn't hesitate to eat 75-year-old honey. It's probably still pretty darn good stuff, as long as the lid's on.
The honeycomb ends up as wax, right?
Yep, beeswax.
Beeswax.
Yep.
right.
Yep, that's what comes out of honeycomb, yellow one, real good.
Oh, yeah,
That's honeycomb.
yeah.
That's all it is. We pulled the honey out of it, we melted it down, we made a block of wax. This is great stuff.
But you can eat it if you buy the comb.
If you buy the comb, you can eat the honey out of the comb, chew it up like chewing gum. If you swallow it, that's
No problem.
no problem. Actually, people ask me about eating comb honey all the time and swallowing the wax. You know what beeswax is? It's a great lower intestinal lubricant.
Oh, wow, I need some.
That's all I'm gonna say about that. That's far enough into, I'm delving into the dark side now.
Better than prunes?
Better than prunes, yeah.
Wow.
Can you tell me how long ago they discovered honey? It's gotta be thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
I'm relatively certain, not positive, I'm relatively certain that the first honey was probably captured from beehives by cavemen.
Yeah,
And they threw it in that stone crock that was outside their cave when they went in to lay down at night. Honey has been here for 20 million years, give or take. It's been here for a long, long time. It is the original sweetener.
Yeah.
The gentry in England were the only ones allowed to keep bees. The princesses and the queens of the castles were the ones who kept the bee yards. Commoners weren't allowed to keep bees. They had to grow vegetables and stuff, and the ladies of the keep were the ones who tended the bees. And I can understand that. They had those long, long dresses on,
Yeah.
the drug on the ground. They were protected. Let me see, what else can I tell you? Oh, we're getting back to the products. Honey, in the 5 forms that I gave it to you. Propolis has its purpose in the world. If you can harvest enough of it, you send it to people like Pillsbury or something like that, and they will make cosmetics out of it for you. An awful lot of lipsticks have propolis in it. An awful lot of other things have propolis added to them, medicinal values. Some pills have propolis contained within them, so that it's just part of that whole process. The beeswax, again, what do we harvest beeswax for? One, to turn it back into the hive to give the bees a starter to get going on. Secondly, we harvest beeswax for its value to us in the community. Beeswax lip balm. It's made from beeswax. You know the funny thing is, I can pronounce every single item that's in this. There is a single thing in this jar, in this tube, that I can't pronounce the name of. You know, you get it, it's beeswax, it's almond oil, it's safflower oil, it's vitamin E oil, it's aloe vera gel.
No chemicals.
Nothing there that I can't pronounce.
My dad
Now-
took this office when he's extracting honey because we're in the stuff all the time, in the wax and the honey, and it's like my hands just stay nice and soft, and it's mostly because of the beeswax. It just moisturizes.
Wow.
Hand cream, plain and simple. Beeswax, borax, mineral oil, distilled water. 4 products. I can name every one of them. I can actually spell them all. It's, this is the things we do to move our harvest from the hive on. We don't waste anything. You want to start running the tasting
Want
around?
us to start getting one prepared while you're talking?
Yep. We're going to send you some taste tests around. And we're going to send you some business cards around. On the back of the business card, I want you to tell me what the flavor of the honey is when you taste it. Okay? You've got 4 choices. You have wildflower, you have raspberry, you have blueberry, and you have buckwheat. Just put the initials beside number 1, 2, 3, or 4 as you taste it.
What happens if people spray their plants with pesticides
Generally, the bee dies out in the field.
already?
Yep. I'll be honest with you, if it comes between me eating and having to spray my plants or not eating, I'll spray my plants.
Oh, in here, too.
But I know how to do it. I do it at the right time.
When they're not out?
If you want to spray your plants with a pesticide for some reason, do it at sunset. That 15, 20 minutes of last light of the day,
It's a guessing game.
when it comes down, there's a dead calm in the air. Every single day, all summer, just as the sun goes down, there's a dead calm. Go spray whatever you want. The bees are all home, they quit flying, nothing's going on. By morning, the half-life of that pesticide is already there. It's no longer toxic for the honeybees. It's dried on the plants or whatever has happened, it's all done. It's all taken care of.
That's why I spray my orchard every night.
Spray it at night.
And it's recommended to keep the grass mowed underneath your trees you're spraying,
Yeah. Anytime
because it will drip down on the plants.
there's anything in blossom, you want to knock it down before you spray. And if you have to spray, my nemesis in all my gardening years, and I've gardened since 1980 also, is Colorado potato beetles. They have Colorado potato beetles. They just absolutely devastate my potatoes if I don't get them under control. Now, I will go out in my garden and I will crush eggs and I will crush beetles, and I will pick those things by hand, and I'll throw them in a can of gasoline, and I will do everything in the world I can think of to get rid of them. And you can't. Eventually, you lose control. And when I lose control, I go get the 7 off the shelf and I go out there and whack them. But I'm making sure that none of my potatoes are in bloom. I'm also making sure I'm not spraying anything on anything but the potatoes. There is a set of pesticides out there I absolutely adore. I hate to say this. There's a set of pesticides out there I absolutely adore. They are Bacillus thuringitis. They are insect specific. You have a Bacillus thuringitis for potato beetle. You have a Bacillus thuringitis effective for striped cucumber beetles. You have a Bacillus thuringitis out there that will only attack the insect that you want it to attack. What a great stuff. You know, I love this stuff. I wish they had one for every plant that I grow for vegetables, and I wouldn't have to worry about any of the bees having a problem. But they don't have it for everything, so we use what we use. I'll talk a little bit for a minute here or two. I don't want to keep you guys forever here, but
So how
I'm
do you
gonna.
want them, do you want them to write the first one on there?
Yep. Once you get done with that one, try to figure out what it is. If you think your taste buds are discerning enough to figure out between, you can wait till you taste all 4 and then write them down.
What are the choices again?
Wildflower,
They're on this.
raspberry, blueberry, and buckwheat. That's all we brought today. We did not bring any pumpkin patch. I don't want to confuse you that badly.
What kind was this?
No, you have to figure it out. You have to figure that one out. Once you taste them all, you'll taste the differences between them. Then you can figure out which one's which. And I will tell you before we leave what they are. So if you don't get them right, that's fine.
Wildflower, blueberry, raspberry, and
Buckwheat, yep.
What was it?
The,
wildflower, blueberry, raspberry, and buckwheat.
yep, they're on that sheet of paper there.
And actually, I do have some pumpkin.
I want to talk a little bit about the dark side of beekeeping right now. We, as beekeepers, have done some really dumb things over the years. In 1983, somebody went to England. They brought back a shirt pocket full of queen bees. They did not declare them at customs. They brought us tracheomite.
Oh.
It was what used to be called Isle of Wight disease. It devastated all the honeybees in England just about the time of World War I, now in 1919. Just killed everything. In 1985, somebody went to Asia, and they liked some queens they saw over there, so they brought some back with them. And they brought us back our real nemesis, varroa mite. V-A-R-R-O-R-A, varroa mite. These are a parasitic mite that live on the outside of the bee. We can actually see varroa. You cannot see tracheal. Tracheal lives inside the bee. Varroa lives outside the bee. It also vectors a great many diseases, a great many problems with it as it goes on. We brought these to America. We now are paying the consequences for that. There are a host of diseases we've dealt with over the years. Most of them, the bees will take care of their own problems. If we have something like European foul brood, it usually comes early in the spring when the ground's wet and the wind's blowing. The bees will clear it up on the first good nectar flow. It's gone. You get a lot of it in the blueberry barrens. It's cold, it's wet, it's windy, it's a horrible time of the year to have bees in that area. But as soon as you pull out of the blueberries and you go to someplace else, that European foul brood will clear up on its own. Sac brood, chalk brood, all of these things we're breeding them out of the bees. We're trying to get them under control and keep the bees from having to deal with this. None of these are significant. The mites are. The one disease that is most devastating at all is a disease called American foul brood. Not European, but American. It's a spore-forming fungus. It's actually a spore-forming bacteria. The only cure, as far as I know, the only sure cure for American foul brood is to throw a pint of kerosene on your hive and light it up. You've got to kill everything. There are ways to salvage bees. I won't deny that. We can salvage our bees even from American foul brood. What we cannot do is keep using that old equipment. It's got to go. So, you know, we've done these things. We manage these bees as best we can. The whole process of commercial pollination in this country spreads all of our diseases and all of our pests around constantly. There's nothing we can do to stop it. Every hobbyist beekeeper in the state of Maine could band together and pollinate blueberries, and we wouldn't have 10,000 hives. How in the world would the hobbyist ever be able to pollinate 60,000 colonies of blueberries if we can't get them? We don't have them. We'll never have enough hobbyist beekeepers in the state of Maine to even do the blueberry crop. So we do have to rely on these commercial beekeepers that are driving around in truck fulls of bees and taking them places. But every time they do, they're bringing us problems. Yep,
What about the latest one, the nicotinoids?
that's what I'm getting to. Well, I'm getting the neonicotinoids and colony collapse both together. Colony collapse disorder hit us about 10 or 12 years ago. It was the newest wave. Actually, there was no such word as colony collapse disorder until somebody invented it a few years ago. It was years ago, 100 years ago, we had disappearing disease. Bees just disappeared. Nobody knew why. The hive was empty. All the bees were gone. This was probably the first cases of colony collapse disorder that we knew about, but we just called it disappearing disease because we didn't know where the bees went. Having said that, over the years, we've gotten these things under control. How many of you believe in cycles? The 100-year weather cycle, the 50-year beach erosion program, whatever. I agree with you. Some flu seasons are much more stringent than other flu seasons. Is there a cycle? Is it every 9 years? Is it every 7 years? Don't know. I believe in a lot of cycles within the bee colonies because I've been able to observe it over the 35 years I've been doing bees. Over the 35 years I've been doing bees, I've developed this idea that there's a 5-year cycle. It took 5 years from 1983 before tracheal mite really hit us hard. It took 5 years from 1985 before varroa mite hit us very hard. And 5 years after we began pollinating almonds on the West Coast with East Coast bees, colony collapse disorder hit. Exactly 5 years. Makes me very suspicious. I believe that there is no answer to colony collapse disorder. I believe this is a very devastating problem that's facing all of us in America. I don't know what the heck we can do about it other than to do the best we can with our bees until we use our trusted scientists to find out what's going on and we can come up with a plan for fixing this. In saying that, certainly this spread of diseases and stuff with the bees that we're getting, moving around and so on and so forth, is going to be with us forever. We can do what we as beekeepers do what we can to keep the bees up and as healthy as we can. We suffer losses, we recover. We go about our business. There's no answer to colony collapse disorder. You pick a cause in this country, put 1,000 people in a room and say, what is your cause? What is it you're most adamant against? And someone will shove their hand up in the air and say, cell phone towers. So cell phone towers are the reason for colony collapse disorder. The next person says polluted water. So polluted water is now the reason that we have colony collapse disorder. There is a host of people out there right now that are on the neonicotinoid bandwagon. This is the reason for colony collapse disorder. None of them are the reason. They're all part of the cause. It's not neonicotinoids per se. It's not almond pollination per se. It's not, the varroa mite is not the answer. but they're all part of the problem. Therefore, it's gotta be a multifaceted approach to solving that problem, and we don't have that right now. We don't have the science backing this stuff up to say anything. You blame neonicotinoids, whatever you wanna do, they are these new pesticides that grow within the plant itself. The seed is treated, as the plant grows, this stuff is in there. The systemic pesticides in the neighborhoods where you have that beautiful, you had your house built, you bought it, it was $268,000. You've spent months and years getting that lawn all flattened out and perfectly pastured, 7/16 tall, perfect green grass. And you have a beautiful crabapple tree that flowers there every spring. So you go get a bag of this stuff from the Walmart, and you go home and it says tree fertilizer, and you don't read it. But you go throw 6 cups underneath your tree. It's full of systemic pesticides. What happens with that? It leaches into the soil. And the plant takes it up, it winds up in the nectar, it winds back up in the beehive. There was not a single solitary piece of wax examined from colony collapse disorder that didn't have 7 to 10 pesticides in it. They're in there. Nothing we can do about it. It's always going to be there. Did it kill the bees? No. Wax is a sponge. It absorbs everything. It'll take those pesticides out of the honey and leave it in the wax. It's what happens. No one pesticide is the answer. All of these are all sublethal. If you looked at them on the charts, they're all sublethal. Not one single one of those pesticides is a lethal dose. You start multiplying those, and you get the symbiosis between 2 pesticides. Now you may have problems. So there's no answer to any of this stuff. None whatsoever. But we're doing the best we can, and as beekeepers, trust us, we're gonna stay at it.
We've
I've
done our
been-
taste testing. We've done our taste testing.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna get to that in just a second. In my 36 years of keeping bees, I will say I've never had a bad day in the bee yard. They've all been wonderful days. I'm never gonna stop. My one hope in this world is to be old and decrepit, much more so than I am now, and fall over on top of a beehive while I've got it open out in the field and get stung to death. What a great way to go. You know, I took care of the bees, bees took care of me. End of it. You know, it may not be the way I want to go, but you know, I look at it, I've done so much for these bees for so many years. I loved every minute of being there. You know, what could be better than being in the bee yards when I go? You know, I'd love to be sitting right there watching the bees and just drift away, but don't know if that's gonna happen either.
How often do you have to take the honey out of the hives?
Me? Once a year.
Once a year?
Yeah, I take mine off on Labor Day.
Okay.
You know why?
No.
It's a sticky, rotten, miserable mess to clean up. I only wanna do it once.
Me too.
You can go all summer.
I just keep putting more boxes on.
Oh,
Now,
I-
sometimes my hives will have 6 or 7 boxes of honey on them. The best year I ever did was 3 tons.
Wow.
Those are long tons. Those are the 2,000-pound tons.
What type of hive do you
I
prefer?
run Langstroth.
Which one?
I run Langstroth hives, the traditional
Oh, okay, not the top.
18, no, top bar hives are death traps. Sorry,
Or,
honeybees.
oh,
You know, we've never had a single colony of bees survive a whole winter in the top bar hive in Maine.
oh, no, I did not know.
Mm.
That's too bad.
The whole story of top bar hives is below Virginia. They'll do well. They don't do well up here.
Simple, Mary.
People call them top bar hives. The real name is Kenyan top bar hives. Well, where's Kenya? Africa. Dang hot over there all the time. So those hives work well over there. They do not work well in temperate
Are they
climates.
easier to harvest, is that why?
No,
No?
no, there's no framework in there, so it's a destructive harvest. It's a pear-shaped comb. They say that bees build more natural. This is the way bees live in the wild. It's natural. They build their own form of cells in there. They build them to their own size. We don't give them starters. We don't ask them to do something they're not supposed to be doing. I do. I mean, I give them a bigger cell than what they would normally grow. So, yeah, maybe I am being bad by doing that. But I can pick mine up and look for disease, and I can do all the things I have to do. With Kenyan, you have to be really, really careful because there's no bottom bar and there's no side bars. It's just wax floating off a bar. You pick it up like this and you turn it a little bit to look in it, and then it breaks off and falls down on the ground. And if you want honey out of it, you cut the comb off and put the thing back in, let them rebuild all of that wax again. You go in, if you want liquid honey, you go in and just mash that all up with a masher and you strain it. Not a particularly good harvest method. Mine, I can take the frame, I cut the wax off the top, put it in the centrifuge, spin it, I put the empty combs right back on and refill them.
Oh,
I'm not
they don't
asking them to do the
break
work
up.
over again. Yeah, good stuff.
What about rhododendrons and bees?
Rhododendrons, if you look really, really close at it, you won't find any bees, honeybees on rhododendrons. You'll find bumblebees. They're the cultivated rhododendrons we have in this country, there's no problem with them.
Okay.
The old rhododendrons that were in Egypt and that kind of the Roman Empire places over there in the Middle East produced a poisonous honey.
Ooh.
So what happened was the Philistines, who had kept all these bees over there, were being chased out by the Romans, so they left all this honey behind. And the Romans ate all the honey. And then the Romans all got sick, and the Philistines came out and kicked crap out of them. Good plan, I like that. And one of the other things was the old straw skeps that we used to keep bees in are illegal now. They're totally illegal, because you can't examine them. You have to have them in a movable frame hive. Those old straw skeps used to go on catapults. And they'd be launched into the castle.
Oh.
Get everybody stung. Then you want to give up.
It was the Incas, I believe, they used them against the enemies. They put them on the head of a statue, make it look like there was a guard out there, and then they'd attack the guard, and the first thing you're gonna do is knock his head off. So there's a lot of angry bees flying around.
Yeah. Bees have been used everywhere to do all kinds of weird things with. Yes?
The killer bees, aren't they from Africa? Did they, mate with other ones?
They're
What
actually,
are they?
the Africanized bees are actually from Brazil, not from Africa. What happened was, we were trying again. Man is trying to screw with nature. He was trying to build a bigger, better, stronger, larger tummied bee. And the Africanized bee has a bigger honey crop, bigger honey stomach. So they were gonna try to crossbreed them into each other. So we'd get a European bee, nice and gentle, with a huge honey crop that could carry more liquid back to the hive every time it came back. And somebody went down and released them all, and now they were mean and nasty, and now we've got Africanized bees all across the southern parts of the United States. It's a tough situation. They're not as bad as we were led to believe. When I visited Africanized bees in Mexico, they were pretty nasty. The bees we're actually getting here in the United States are not that bad. So they've tempered down a little bit as they come north. They're not by any means the answer to anything. We have them every year in Maine.
Oh, really?
They come in with the pollinators, they go back with the pollinators, hopefully. My one great fear of beekeeping in the state of Maine is that some kid on a four-wheeler is gonna run around one of these back roads up in northern Maine into one of those clear cuts, and there's gonna be 50 hives of Africanized bees sitting there, and he's gonna get stung all to pieces. And when that happens, my hives are Africanized, no matter whether they are or not. The uproar in the state is gonna be so huge with people from Portland and Biddeford and Saco and places like that, that hobbyist beekeepers are not gonna be able to keep bees in this state. We're gonna have to give it up. Because they will ban, or they will license, or we will have to have every hive of our bees tested every year
Wow.
to see if they're Africanized. And at $200 a hive, if I make $50 a hive, I'm lucky. With all the honey I can produce, if I make $35 a hive, I'm lucky. Making enough to have all my hives tested every year, be impossible. So, that's that. All right, number one
Number one.
was wildflower.
I got one.
Number 2 was raspberry.
Yes. I got 2 out of 2 on that.
Number 3, of course, was blueberry.
Yeah.
And we held the very worst for last. Buckwheat.
Molasses.
Yeah, very much molasses. We had an English lady, actually true English lady from England at Freiburg Fair one year. Tell us, she says, you know, that tastes an awful lot like nutty molasses in her beautiful English voice. And that's what we've gone with ever since. Yep, it's kind of like a nutty molasses. Unless you're talking to me.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's just, I can run out there in that parking lot, melt some of that tar down, and you'll have the same thing. I think it tastes like road tar. I hate buckwheat. But I have a following that'll buy it every year, so we have a guy in a rustic that makes us 1 pail a year, and that's all we need.
It really is, and that's what the order, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see the drastic differences in the color. If you pick one up, it doesn't look like that much, but side by side.
It's, and every year, our honey is different. We cannot guarantee. I've had very dark honey years, when everything I've made has been the color of the blueberry, or darker. I've had other years where it's water white. It's got that prettiest whitish, you know, just that lightest yellow tinge to it.
Does it have any taste?
Yeah, it depends. I've had dark honeys that don't have any taste. I've had light honeys that don't have any
So
taste.
it's not.
I've had light honeys that'll knock your socks off. This is the best honey I've ever had. And I've had dark honeys the same way. God, that's good honey. But you never can be, you can never tell.
I was hoarding the pumpkin.
2 years ago, my honey was very light, and you admitted it when I picked it up. It was
Yep.
awful light. I won the Saginaw County Bee Club's tasting, and I won the one here in Cumberland tasting. Entered the same hive the next year, and I placed second. It just, you never know from one year to the next. You just, when you get a good crop, everybody wants it.
Yep, it is all what it is.
It's what it is.
By far, probably our most popular honey of all of the honeys that we do, other than wildflower, which is always the cheapest because we make the most of it, is pumpkin. And it's not pumpkin honey. It's what we call pumpkin patch. How many of you are familiar with Route 201 going to Augusta and Rocky Ridge Orchard?
Yeah.
Best sandwiches in the market, I'm telling you. I could get really fat if I lived any closer to them.
Jars, but compared to the other honey, that's the pumpkin. No pumpkin flavor.
It's
It is just the
uber,
latest-
it's uber sweet.
The most
We have to call
delicate
it
honey
pumpkin
we have.
patch, because he doesn't actually grow all
Isn't that
pumpkins
the
out there.
difference?
He has squashes
This is
and
the
gourds
pumpkin
and
patch.
other stuff.
I thought they were all.
But it's really sweet honey. Isn't it good? It's different. It's different, totally. I've always been amazed by that.
It seems like you can almost taste the honeycomb in that. You know, the wax.
I think what you're tasting is the sweetness of the honey more than anything. It is exceptionally good. Any other questions I can answer for you? I think I beat up your eardrums enough for one day.
You have any hives up there in Rocky Ridge?